Hello everyone and welcome to Reentry. In this video we will take a look at some of the new features that you can see in version 0.997. The primary purpose of this update is to roll out some critical fixes around the Gemini Ascent and the Gemini Campaign, but I've also rolled out the new features that allows new players to easily navigate some of the contents this game has to offer. So this game comes with over 50 academy lessons and 4 different campaigns with quite a lot of missions each, which means that navigating all of these things could be quite a challenge. So the career path, accessible from the main menu, as in career, allows you to go in and see how far you're progressed on a specific spacecraft. There's a spacecraft selection that allows me to select which active spacecraft I want to use. For example, Mercury, Gemini, Command Module, and the Lunar Module. I've been trying to modify some of my progress here just to kind of highlight how the system works. So for example, if I now go into Mercury, you can see that there's 2 different paths. One of them is to become a Mercury astronaut. This is basically the main mode of the game. And to make progress here, you will need to obviously complete the Quick Start campaign and complete all the academy lessons, the exam, before you're unlocking the Mercury Pilot badge. And this badge, you can see that there's different rank icons. So you can see that there's this one line here on this Mercury spacecraft, or a capsule here, and 2 lines here indicating that you're kind of improved your ranking. And then the nodes build up towards becoming a Mercury commander. And Elite Commander is awarded to those who can complete absolutely every single node in this tree. So if I now go back, there you can see that there's also one called a controller candidate. This is basically for mission control. And mission controls allows players to join a mission as a controller where they focus on specific systems. So in order to unlock kind of that rank for each of these different roles that you can have in the Mercury Control Center, you need to complete some of the academy lessons to unlock kind of that graduate thing. And then you'll need to reach Mercury Controller level 2, for example. Before you can become an engineer. And engineers are those who are usually monitoring those specific systems. You can, of course, complete all of them and unlock this one, but you only need to complete one path to get there. Then, as an engineer, you will need to get more experience in the room itself to learn more about it, get a good feel of it, understand the mechanics and how missions usually go. And these levels are gained by joining online games. So if you're part of an online game, you will start gathering experience points that builds up this level. This one will then unlock 3 different paths. If you want to become a general mission controller, which basically can handle any role in the room looking at the systems, you can go this path. And there's a dedicated path for Capcom. So you will need to get experience with a spacecraft if you want to become Capcom. So typically in the real world, Capcom were an actual astronaut who had good experience of the spacecraft itself. So obviously you will need to do this. And then you will also need to play as Capcom in a mission control session to gain levels on this one as well. So this is a specific level. You will only gain this level by actually being the Capcom in a mission. And the same applies to Flight Director. So Flight Director will need you to complete all of the Mercury exams so you have a good understanding of the spacecraft itself, but also play as a Flight Director for a while. And once you've done that, you have become the next Flight Director rank. And then you can keep playing this to improve your ranking as well. So that's Mercury, and just to quickly also, for example, show the command module, you can see that there's a similar setup to here. You can have the astronaut path, and you have recommended learning. So recommended learning is a kind of a guidance that tells you that, okay, before you start playing the command module, which is a very advanced spacecraft. It has a lot of systems. You should become a Gemini pilot and a Mercury pilot. This is a bug. I'll need to fix that, which basically tells you that, okay, to unlock this, you can, of course, not care about this. You can play this immediately once you're in the game if you don't want to play Mercury or Gemini, but you should try and follow these recommendations. And then the same applies to becoming a controller. You have these systems paths to become an engineer, and then you have these different paths to become a flight director, a Capcom, or a specific mission controller. So obviously this is very early in its development, so this is the first iteration. I already have a couple of things that I will need to fix on this, but I'll roll that out as soon as possible. So with the career path, you can actually go in here and say that, okay, I've yet to complete campaign mission 4, then I can go ahead and click that one, and it will actually take me right into the correct campaign, and I can select the last mission, because you still want to read the text and the in-betweens here, and then you can launch that mission. And that the same thing applies to completing a lesson. For example, Mercury lesson 6, you can launch this directly from there. Okay, with that, another main thing here is obviously the changes around Gemini Ascent. As I mentioned, some people have been struggling with Gemini Ascent. Some people have reported that they have issues on, let me just get this one up. So some people reported they have issues on the first phase of ascent. So basically, once the rocket lifts off the pad, it flies upwards for a few seconds, and then everything kind of goes in random directions, and you're ending up with a critical failure on the ascent, meaning that you will need to either abort or quit the mission, meaning there's no way to reach orbit. I've also heard some rare cases where players have had issues after stage 1. So when stage 2 is ignited and has been burning for a bit, then the similar issue kind of starts to happen. Unfortunately, or fortunately, I was able to reproduce these issues, and I've been writing a lot of fixes to accommodate for that. However, there still might be some stability issues. Some of you might still experience this issue, and if you do, please let me know so we can dive even further into this, because on my test machines and the testing that we've now done on the alpha floor, it seems like it's now working for everyone who has tested it there, but I've yet to get experience reports from you who used to have issues around this. So if you do, please let me know. There's a dedicated thread on the Discord server where you can report these issues, and we'll discuss it and figure out what's going wrong. Another thing that I've talked about in this update is to increase the round of the Mercury Control Center and Apollo Mission Control Center, and that's the alpha testing round. So we're now transitioning from alpha testing round 1, which completed about a year ago, and we're now transitioning into alpha testing round 2. The main things that you will see on alpha testing 2 is that we want to ensure that the major engine updates that we did a couple of patches ago doesn't influence mission control. And the reason for this is that one critical issue that followed as a side effect to the major engine update was that no matter what you did in the Apollo Mission Control Center, the game would crash to desktop after about 1 minute to about 5 minutes of gameplay, like no matter what. And I was able to reproduce this 100% of my times. I fixed the issue, but I also want to start playing Mission Control much more to verify that there's nothing else that kind of has changed the logic or requires me to make additional updates in terms of stability after the engine update. The main intent of the alpha testing is, of course, to test the initial network logic, make sure that we have authentication, you're able to join games, and that we can see data, kind of the basics of the basics, basically. And the mission control, or all of the multiplayer modules, have been scheduled for about version 1.2 and will progress towards 2.0. So that's when you will see the main developments happening on the mission control modules. However, alpha testing round 2 will of course start to address some things, and we'll kind of try and slowly transition and add some functionality for every update going forward, from what we learned from the official sessions. So we're also planning on setting up some official sessions again. So we're going to get back into a regular cadence of having online sessions that you can join, gain levels on the different ranks and different roles that you want to train yourself in, and of course learn how to be a mission controller in a Mercury mission and an Apollo mission. And lastly, for this update, I've done some fixes about the command module entry guidance. So for now, I'm just going to quickly load into the entry mission, and then I'll set everything up, and then I'll be right back with you. So here I am in the command module and performing a very simple setup of entry, and the command module guidance systems are now in full control of the spacecraft. And as you can see, if you recall from previously, the RCS indicators here would be jumping a lot around and providing a lot of different inputs for the entire thing. So of course, there we go, during the entire entry. So one of the things that I've been trying to stabilize is both the guidance system. So you can see that the trajectory is now in full control of the computers, and it tries to kind of not maintain a max level of Gs currently, but it's trying to make you survive entry and follow a very simplified entry profile based on some of the realistic data that we have from the Apollo missions that was flown in real life. But one of the major improvements that you will see now, if you are trying to use automatic entry, is that the RCS systems are much more stable. The improvements contains a big overhaul of the Apollo reaction control system, and you will actually also feel this when you're performing command module RCS thrusts in general, but also of course during automatic entry and manual entry. Manual entry is still the recommended procedure currently, just to give you full control and get you very familiar with how to fly the command module through the atmosphere. But obviously the most realistic thing here is to be able to do this using the command module's guidance computer. That covers the main things of this update. So first of all, thank you for reporting issues, for testing the alpha floor bits, and for providing me with suggestions and feedback, and for playing re-entry.